UFC 299 days away, and my goodness, what a card it is. We get to see a rematch in the bantamweight division from a fight that happened all the way back at UFC 252 between Sean O'Malley and Chito Vera. Also on the co-main event, Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis, Kevin Holland versus Michael Venom Page, Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena, Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. The list keeps going. Curtis Blaydes versus Jelton Almeida. You know the card is good when we're going into the prelims, boys, to list out a few fights. Harry Powell joins me as always, and you know he didn't get enough thought out at the big podcast this week. He had to come back for more. That's how you know how big a card it is. Shawnee Sheen joins us for the preview show. Well, it's not the preview show, it's the Severe Setup, which will be a preview show ahead of 299 this weekend. Let's get straight into it, lads. Look at watched back Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera, their first fight. It was a fight for Sean O'Malley. It was a pretty defining fight because he came into that fight with Chito off the back of a big win of Eddie Wineland, a big knockout of Eddie Wineland. Previously, he had some difficulties in a win against Jose Alberto Quinones after hurting his ankle. I think that was the fight. But this fight was really where the big questions started being raised about Sean O'Malley, about his durability, about how good he is. The fight itself, I didn't take too much away from that first one because I think Sean hurt his ankle pretty early days and it was affecting him pretty bad. The finish of the fight was a lot more vicious than I remember. But in terms of taking stuff away from the from that first fight, there's a little bit that you can take away, but not too much that you can depend on. Harry Powell, I'm going over to you first. From that very first fight, 2020, we're 4 years of the difference. We're almost 50 events clear of that event. When you're looking at Sean O'Malley and you're looking at Chito Vera coming into this fight, what are the big differences that you see, or if any, do you see any differences at all between both of these fighters and what they presented back then and what they present right now? Obviously, the big one with Sean O'Malley being the champion and securing the belt since that first rematch. But your thoughts on this one, please?
So I think that for the most important thing for me is that Sean O'Malley has become a man since that fight, right? He's fathered a child. He is in a relationship, and outside of winning the belt, there comes, I think, certain things that you see and walk through that change you as a human. And it feels as though that has rounded him out slightly. Now, there's still the same shtick with Sean O'Malley. There's still the same hair. There's the streams. There's this, there's that. He's still doing everything that got him to the dance at the very, very first instance. But there's a confidence in it to me now. And I think to me, the second big thing is the win against Petr Yan. Now, there are contextual variables that we can talk about when it comes to both the Chito Vera fight, then and now. And there are contextual variables that we can talk about against Petr Yan. But going in, I remember I picked Petr Yan for that fight, and I thought it was going to be a relatively simple fight for Petr Yan if he was able to get inside, if he was able to land takedowns, if he was able to control the fight in the way that I thought he was going to be able to. And Sean O'Malley proved that wasn't going to be the case. And that he was, I think Shawnee at the time posted up a tweet or something about Sean O'Malley being the real deal. And that was a massive win. And I agreed with him then, and I agree with him now, that if you go out and put on a performance like he did against Petr Yan, that really, really does tell me something. But still, I do think there are lingering question marks around Sean O'Malley. I feel like there are no longer lingering question marks around Chito Vera. We know exactly who we are going to get. I think he has rounded himself out very, very, very well. But I do think he's reached the peak of his capabilities, specifically in his age, but also in his skills. The experience is there, fine. But I think when you get to the level of sort of career trajectory as Chito Vera is right now, you're not going up any further. You may be at your apex, you may be at your peak, but for somebody like Chito Vera, if he wins here, fantastic. But I wouldn't say he'd be a long reigning champion. But for Sean O'Malley, I think this is a perfect time for the rematch.
Indeed, very well said, Harry. Look, you spoke of the tweet that Sean put out on Sean O'Malley to say, you know, he is legit after that Peter Yan. Before that tweet, Shawnee, you know, we had a conversation on the Contender, and we also raised the big question, and I think it's been the most prominent question, definitely between all three of us here, is the durability. You spoke about it on the big podcast as well, and there was never a time that it was questioned more than after that fight with Marlon Vera. Since that fight and what you've seen in recent times, what's your feelings on, you know, Sean O'Malley overall as a fighter, his levels of durability, and is it a thing that what Harry just said there, you know, we were talking about a young man in his early 20s, and, you know, now he has obviously more experience, he's gotten older, he's filled out his body a lot more as well, plus he has that championship level of confidence coming into this rematch with Chito Vera. What are your thoughts?
I've talked about it now on 3 different podcasts. This is the 4th time, and I'm still not sure, to be honest. And I think it's like it got brought up again in the Q&A last week, and the question was posed: is it still an unanswered question about Sean O'Malley? And I think it is. Like the Yan fight, which Harry spoke about very well there, went a long way to showing it wasn't. But did it go the whole way? I don't think necessarily yet. Now, durability is a word to use for it, but I don't think durability is necessarily the right word. Like, I think it's his physical body itself. Like durability, usually we look at like the ability to take the amount of punches or whatever. For him, more it's like, you know, him kind of falling apart a little bit is his issue. Now, are we overplaying it because it happened in such a big fight like the Chito fight, and this is the rematch of that fight? I know it's, as you mentioned, it happened in a couple of other fights as well, and we had the eye poke and we had leg kicks in certain fights as well. It could be a thing that never happens in his career again, and it washes away and it never becomes a talking point. But again, the way to pose it, I think, is that it's still an unanswered question. But Graham made a point on the podcast as well, like, is Chito good enough to ask that question now? Like, is Chito still... So they fought the first time, and you could say maybe watching back that fight, O'Malley was a little bit, if not a good bit ahead, but Chito was good enough to capitalize once he got hurt, or he was good enough to hurt him. Like, he did hurt him as well in that fight. It was his leg kicks or the checks or whatever that hurt him. He deserves credit for that. But, like, is he close enough now, considering the improvements O'Malley has made? And I know, as Harry said, Chito has made some movements as well. Is he good enough now to capitalize on something like that, or to make his body fall apart? Like, I feel like Graham made the point like that will only happen against someone very good again, possibly. And I feel like that might be the way to look at this. Because, like, if you're picking, you know, I know we're not doing picks here, we're doing analysis, which is very different. But if you're making your pick based on that, it's probably not the way to go. If you're doing analysis and that's the sort of way it could finish, I think that's very fair analysis, and we'll all look like geniuses. I haven't spent 5 minutes talking about it if it happens that way at the weekend. But I think it's probably one of those talking points that this severe setup will talk about that probably no one else will talk about much. And I think that's for the detriment of the fight, to be honest. Now, there's lots of other things to talk about in the fight as well, but I definitely think that could become part of it, and it's definitely something to worth noting before we enter Saturday.
You said it. There's many different avenues we could go down for this fight. We could go down the avenue that, does Chito Vera even deserve to be in this position? You know, we have Maravdashvili, who's putting on a hell of a run right now in the bantamweight division. He's knocking on the door. You know, you mentioned something there, Shawnee, that I wanted to kind of bring up again, was that, you know, we might not see the levels of durability with Sean O'Malley until he's fought someone good enough. You know, Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling might have a thing to say about that, but they're not big, powerful leg kickers or don't have big, powerful shots. You know what I mean? I think that's more so what you were meaning.
No, I mean, well, it was Graham's point, really. I think really what he means is, like, O'Malley could be so far ahead in this fight that, like, you know, do you know how to use that phrase? You won't lay a glove on him. Obviously, that it's more a phrase for other sports that take our sport or boxing into. But, like, you know, if the fight is pushed longer, could he fall apart? Like, I think Chito on the first fight didn't kind of force him to fall apart so much as there was one big incident or maybe two big incidents and then he fell apart. But now I think it'd probably take someone who's someone very good, and I say this is Graham's point, someone very good to actually make him fall apart, because O'Malley himself is very intelligent and fights in a more safe way, I think, than he has before. But I think that's someone, I actually just recorded a Q&A before, and but someone asked me about that as well, like about the safety of which O'Malley fights, because we've seen, not just because of their first fight, but also the way Vera fights, the Font fight, especially, obviously, where, you know, he lost 4 minutes of the rounds and then he came back and he won big parts of the round. Like, the safety levels for O'Malley, like how far do you take that? Like, do you go and try to dominate him over 5 minutes of all 5 rounds and not attack him much at all, but then risk losing some of those rounds in the same way Font lost some of those rounds? Or do you attack a little bit more to add up on the judges' scorecards that he can't really draw it back unless he lands up massive or knocks you out? I think that's a big part of it as well, and that plays into it. Like, can he do that? Can he fight that sort of way? But I think that's very interesting. So I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, like with that first fight with Chito, things that I noticed, Sean O'Malley came in wearing 2 ankle wraps into that fight. Was there something coming into that fight that wasn't it? Was it the previous injury? He had hurt his ankle. Remember the time when he was on the mat with Rogan and Rogan was lying down and interviewing him? He badly hurt his ankle there. Was it a lingering injury? One thing for sure is that we do know it was a reaction to the calf kicks, to the leg kicks that Chito was throwing. So I'm very, very curious. And if I'm Chito Vera, I'm coming out here and I'm fucking calf kicking straight from the bat here in this fight, because you want to test that again, Harry, don't you? What did you see in that first fight, or how do you believe that the injury was accumulated? Do you think it was all the leg kicks? Do you think it might be a mixture of a bit of an injury and the damage that he took? And what way did you see that fight shaping out, which wasn't for that long? I think we probably got maybe 90 seconds of pure raw kind of analysis to take from that fight, where both these guys were fully healed or not injured during the fight. What did you see from that first fight, and what do you think we can expect to see in this rematch?
So I'm going to start with, I guess, an auxiliary point to try and make a larger point. And that's that the other side of this for me, for Chito Vera, is this is his last chance, right? And so there is an element with which you take your last chance and you might take slightly more risks than you would previously. Now, that could play to his benefit, obviously, but it could also play to his detriment. We saw with Sean O'Malley, and I think one of Sean O'Malley's best weapons is his ability to snipe from the outside, right? In that first fight, like we didn't really see a lot that we could really do some huge analysis on. And just to sort of echo the second question, definitely the damage was done by the leg kicks. I think to Shawnee's point, and a point that maybe is a mad point to make, I don't know, but the frame that Sean O'Malley has, the size that he is, the height that he is, to make that weight, you are likely either draining yourself of so many vital vitamins and minerals and whatever, that your bones may well be slightly more brittle. Or because of your stature in your frame, it wouldn't shock me that because he's so tall and there's so much of him from a sort of a mass perspective, he can't then go and do let's say a Piotr Jan, where Piotr Jan could go on and put 2 or 3 kilos of muscle on over a couple of years and really thick himself out and add some armor on. Sean O'Malley certainly doesn't have that luxury unless he were to go up a weight class or 2. Now, what do I think will happen in this specific fight? I think I completely agree with what you said, that Chito Vera will come out and try and test the legs again. It's something that he does. I don't think he's going to come out hell for leather. One, because Sean O'Malley is too elusive, and so he won't be there to be gone hell for leather for. And I suspect that Chito will know that if he does barrel into the pocket, he's going to get clipped. The question for me is how much is Chito willing to put his foot on the gas in order to enter? How willing is he to try and draw Sean O'Malley out to land counters? Go on.
I think that is the key question in this fight, if I'm being honest. When we're looking at these two guys stylistically, both of them are kind of snipers. We've seen Chito, play possum, work on the back foot, and then kind of come forward and land those big shots. It was the was it the Rob Font or was it the Corey Sandhagen fight that we talked about, that where it was really close, but it was Chito that was landing the more impactful shots? And with Sean O'Malley as well, he depends, Shawnee, a lot on his power as well. So we could see a good old, I know we're about 2 weeks away from that Mexican card now, but we could see a good old-fashioned Mexican standoff in this fight with one of these two guys just holding out, waiting for that perfect opportunity to get off their big shot here.
It could be, or it could be the other way around too. I know, like, Harry made two kind of contradictory points there, not to say either of them are right or wrong, but he said Chito might need to put himself in more danger than he's ever put himself in because he knows it might be his last chance. And then he said he can't rush in because O'Malley will clip him. You know, those two things kind of don't work together. You know, you're going to have to do one of them. You know, you're going to have to, and maybe it is the rushing. Now, so there's two ways of looking at that. You both mentioned the Font fight, you know, where he'd waited and boom, sniped. You can do that, or you can do the rush in, push the pace, push the body, push the bones, push the fucking calcium. You know, see if he can not just break him, but break his body. You have the damn sight more of a chance of doing that if you push the pace, you know, bank on your durability over his durability. You might be there in the 4th round with 2 cut eyes, two broken hands, but you might have the championship belt wrapped around you, you know, and that might be the start of fight that Chito Vera needs to fight to win. And you know what? I actually think he does, because what the points you made there were very good and I think correct. But like the pop, the technique, the Mexican standoff, I think O'Malley wins that. Like, I think he wins it like almost every single time if something big doesn't happen, in terms of something big in one big thing or 25 minutes of a big thing happening, well, whether that's an attack that is really well set that wins, or an attack that's badly set that could also win, you know, a Nicholas Dalby type of win. Let's put it that way, and I don't mean that's badly set, but you know what I mean. It's I'll put myself on the line to win this fight. I think that's very intriguing. Now, I haven't said that right. I think we're making this fight actually sound more intriguing than it actually is. Like, I do think O'Malley will win pretty handily. I think he'll piece him up.
There's one thing, is that's how bad he wants this rematch. You know what I mean? He's given Chito this opportunity. He wants to go in there and get back that win. I'm sure he wants to do it in an impressive fashion. He's up there now, close to superstar status, if you want to call him a superstar in the UFC based on current standards. You probably could in some ways, but you know, when he is at the top of pay-per-views, there is a lot more hype. He has that following as well. There's that factor, maybe to talk about the game plan as well, and the double-edged sword that Marlon Vera is kind of facing here, because I agree too. I really feel that he's got to try and move Sean O'Malley on the back, he's got to move Sean O'Malley on the back foot here and land with volume. I think whoever's the bigger volume puncher in this fight is going to have the best chance, obviously, of connecting and the best chance of finishing this fight. We talk about the leg kicks as well, will be interesting. But Harry, my question is, what if the leg kicks don't work? And what happens if the forward pressure doesn't work? It's likely we're going to see Chito Vera down on the canvas knocked out. Would you be of that opinion, or do you think there's any other avenues that he can take to try and get the better of Sean O'Malley?
I mean, who knows? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it really does depend. Like, the thing that keeps ringing in my ear, and I don't think this will happen. Right? I don't think this will happen. But we said that Israel Adesanya should absolutely destroy Sean Strickland, and that didn't happen. Now, that happened by Sean Strickland standing in Israel Adesanya's face and putting jabs in it, right? And landing shots and, you know, being there, being voluminous. Do I think Chito Vera can fight that way? Probably. He's a professional mixed martial artist. He probably can. Will he? I don't think he will. Now, what happens if he can't push Sean O'Malley back? What happens if the teeps to the body don't work? What happens if the low kicks don't work? Well, then he's going to have to try and do the thing that every other fighter is unable to do against Sean O'Malley, and that's force Sean O'Malley to miss. And that's an extremely difficult thing to do. I also think, you know, Chito can grapple.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. I think, you know, you could maybe throw a few level changes, try and take the fight down. You know, do what we see a lot of fighters do now, and it's separating off the clinch and landing strikes off the clinch as well. It's like what Shawnee said there. You know, you're not going to win a Mexican standoff fight against Sean O'Malley. He's got the length, he's got the technique, he uses his jab so well. It's very, very interesting. But the more and more, as Sean said, you talk about this fight, you think about this fight, the more and more I lean towards Sean O'Malley here. But look, at MMA is going to MMA sometimes. You just don't know. It's like Chito Vera could go out there and pull Sean Strickland. We just don't know. And plus, he's got a big, big mental advantage in knowing what happened in that first fight. And the advantage that Chito Vera has is the kind of mental hurdle that Sean O'Malley is going to have to get over. We're talking about Chito going out there and throwing leg kicks straight away. Well, Sean O'Malley is immediately going to have to deal with that. You know, and it's how he deals with that and how Chito implements that style of a game plan. I think in the early stages of this fight, it's hugely based on confidence for me and who can get the upper hand in the first half of the first round of this fight. And I'm very curious to see that. I could talk about this for a little bit longer, but this card is so stacked, lads. We've got to keep it moving. Any final thoughts here? If anyone has anything to say before we move on to the co-main event? We good? Let's do it. Dustin Poirier, Benoit Saint Denis. I'm going straight in here, lads. Let me set myself here. I'm not convinced that Benoit Saint Denis is going to get this job done. To be honest, it's like, look at, you can go back and look at all of the previews that we've done on video and go back to when Benoit Saint Denis made his debut in the UFC against Oleksiejczuk dos Santos at welterweight, a weight up that he's fighting now. You'll hear me talking him up to the stars on that. I'd watched him at UAE Warriors. He was 10-0, I believe, when he came into the UFC, maybe less, 8-0 actually, as I check his record. He was doing the thing. He was undefeated in UAE Warriors and Brave as well. It was actually mostly Brave, but he was really, really good when he came in here. Lost that first fight to Oleksiejczuk dos Santos, moved down to lightweight, put a hell of a run together. Nicholas Stolze, Gabriel Miranda, Ishmael Bonfim, Thiago Moises, Matt Frivola. But we have a massive step ahead of us here up towards Dustin Poirier. And I think there's two things. The people are getting a little bit excited about Benoit Saint Denis and his level of skill so far. I think people are kind of disparaging Dustin Poirier's level of skills after what happened in the Justin Gaethje fight. And I think a mixture of both of those kind of aspects here in this fight is going to equal a win for Dustin Poirier for me. Like I almost said without a doubt there, but I'm honestly thinking that it's like, I don't know, strange things can happen, but I think Dustin has the bull by the horns here. He has the grip between his teeth. He has a point to prove. Obviously, Benoit Saint Denis does as well, but we've seen Benoit Saint Denis slip up too much inside of the octagon for me not to think that Dustin Poirier is not going to be able to draw him into a war and catch him in here, because I think, Harry, the biggest criticism for Benoit Saint Denis is the fact that, and we've talked about it time and time again, when he is on, when he is focused and when he's fully concentrated, he is a very, very dangerous fighter. But as you like to say, he has that level of mad bastardry about him as well at the same time. And you just can't be doing that against such a polished boxer like Dustin Poirier.
I don't think you can. But I also am not sure if Dustin Poirier is Dustin Poirier anymore. And that's the question I have in this fight. Like, Dustin Poirier has fought so many UFC fights. He has been an MMA fighter for so long. And the fights that he's calling for, or was calling for, is a Conor McGregor fight who, let's be honest, is nowhere near his prime. A Nathan Diaz fight who, let's be honest, is nowhere near his prime. He gets given a Justin Gaethje fight, and fine, it goes the way it goes. The fight before that is a brutal finish as well. And so Dustin Poirier strikes me as the kind of guy that doesn't want to go quietly, doesn't want to go out with a whimper, but also strikes me as the kind of person that doesn't talk about retirement lightly. And he has been talking about retirement in the lead up to this fight. Do I think that Dustin Poirier, even 3 years ago, goes through Benoit Saint Denis like a knife through butter? Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. But things change and people change, and the effect of two disastrous knockouts changes a man, I think, or can change a man, has the ability to change a man, I should say. I shouldn't say it's changed a man, right? And my big fear here is that Poirier does drag him into a war because he does think, I can clip him there, I can find him there. And that we find out that the chin has fallen off the cliff. Because Benoit Saint-Denis' chin has yet to fall off a cliff. And it will. And it probably will quickly because of the type of fights that he's in. But we have seen with Benoit Saint-Denis that he could do a bit of the grappling and he can do the war stuff. And don't get me wrong, on any given Sunday, Dustin Poirier is one of my favorite fighters to watch. I just worry for the war in this one.
Yeah, very well said. And I can't argue too much with what you said. Shawnee, what are your thoughts on this one?
Do you know what this reminds me of? With Cheltenham coming up, and sometimes there'd be a race on, right? And there'd be 4 or 5 horses around the top, and they'd be all similar enough price, and you're thinking, who's going to win it? And then you look at the 6th horse, right? And the 6th horse is there is like 6-1, 7-1. And you know the name, you recognize it, you look at it, and it goes, oh, this lad was the champion 3 years ago. And, you know, he was a champion 4 years ago, too, and he came second 2 years ago. But is he the same? He's a class horse in the race, right? But is he the same? And invariably, a lot of the times, that horse wins. A lot of the time, that horse wins. Will that be the case here? Like, that horse is better than all the other horses, but are they better than, like, if that happened next year, would the horse win again? Maybe not. Like, that, we're at that point with Poirier. Like, Poirier is a better fighter than Saint-Denis. Right, maybe Saint-Denis will go on and become a very, very, very good fighter and eclipse Poirier and eclipse a lot of other people in that division. He very much could, but I don't think he's there right now. The thing that Saint-Denis has over Poirier is he is that young, and he's not that young, but he's the kind of the carefree, I'll throw everything at it. I have full belief I'm going to win. Like, Poirier knows he can lose, right? And that's not a drawback on him at all. That's a fact. He knows himself. Like, it's just one of those things. You know, obviously Saint-Denis has lost as well, but he's on that run.
Not lightweight though. In fairness, he still has that. You know,
not a lightweight, but that's that fight. I went back and I watched it. That's a bad fight to lose. Like, losing that fight in the way he lost it is not good. And it wasn't 20 years ago either. Like,
fucked him over badly. It was one of the worst refereeing displays of all time.
Yeah, it was awful. He should have been stopped. And I even look at the Thiago Moises fight, Shawnee, in Paris that time as well, and you look at the first round of that, a very, very competitive fight on the feet, and it was because Benoit Saint-Denis was getting drawn into this kind of war. And I don't think I'm not saying that Dustin Poirier will destroy him immediately it happened, but like, it's a dangerous game to be playing with a guy like Poirier, isn't it?
It's weird because, right, a war would actually, I think, suit Saint-Denis, but him trying to fight a war would suit Poirier, right?
Yeah.
Which is, if you get what I mean, you know?
That's exactly what I was trying to say, to be honest. Yeah.
Poirier will pick him apart and he'll jab him, like, or will he? Like, what Harry said there, I don't really have any further thoughts on what Harry said, because what Harry said is 100% correct. Is Poirier just past it? Like, and I hate to say that because Poirier is a great fighter and I don't want to write a guy off after one fight, but it could just be the case. If it's not the case, I think he'll win. And I'm picking him. That's why I'm picking him. But I'm absolutely not writing him off. But he absolutely could be as well. And you've seen a lot of that ATG gym. Like, look at Amanda Nunes and a few more of them. Like, they've been getting a little bit older, and you know, sometimes that happens as well. It happened with Extreme Couture a few years ago as well. They all kind of fell off a cliff at one time, and now they've made a comeback again. But look at Greg Jackson. So they all fell off a cliff at one time. Sometimes that can happen, and I'm just not sure. And look, that's why this fight's fun. And there's a lot of fights like this that it's one guy on the way up and one guy maybe on the way down, and who's gonna be, you know, better on the night? We'll see.
That's it. It's the question around Dustin Poirier for me is where he's at after that last knockout, and if he can kind of get motivated enough to get himself prepared. Will the chin hold up? And for Benoit Saint-Denis, I think if he had fought one fighter and won against that fighter, I might be thinking differently about him. I just haven't seen him enough against, you know, top level competition to be confident to pick Saint-Denis. So I'd be leaning towards Dustin Poirier myself in this fight. Third fight on the card, and it's the debut of MVP. I'd be amiss if I didn't go to you first, Shawnee, about MVP and his introduction into the UFC. Another fighter, if you go back and listen to the Contender that we spoke about, and we asked ourselves 2 questions about Bellator that time, and we both just said, I want to see MVP in the UFC, and you said, I want to see MVP in the UFC as well, and now we have fucking MVP in the UFC. It's brilliant.
Oh, it's great. And like people, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, MVP has no chance. He'll never win a title. It's too old. He's on your show. Shut the fuck up. Just enjoy it. Enjoy it. He's fucking so fun. I just love the way he fights. And you know what? He's a dying breed as well. We don't have many of these fighters left, like your Wonderboys, your Anderson Silvas. Those are dying breeds. Like, look what happened to Michel Pereira when he came into the UFC. Like, they took it out of him. They cut his balls off. That's what happens to fighters like that these days. We don't have that many of them. So fucking enjoy him while we have him. And you know what? He's a damn good fighter as well. Let's be honest. People love to write him off and love to say he's a show pony and all of that. Look, he has gone in there and fought a load of cans. He has gone to boxing when he shouldn't have, and bare knuckle boxing and all that jazz. And it's a pity. And no one has been hurt by it more than me. I'm a massive MVP fan. But now's the time. He's there. He's in there with Kevin Holland, who's a good fighter, but not a great fighter. I think it's good matchmaking. I think he can absolutely win the fight. But I just can't wait to see. I don't care who wins. I'm here for the entertainment. MVP. Like, if you hate MVP, right, just realize you're a hater. Like, there's no reason. He's a lovely guy, a real nice guy, an exciting fighter, a fun fighter, throws it out there. Now, sometimes, look, people won't go near him and he won't go near them, and it turns into snooze fest. That can happen the odd time, all right. But normally
it can't happen this time around, though, isn't it? Especially they've hyped him. He's talked a big game. I feel that he's a guy that he knows when he needs to produce, and I think this is a perfect kind of stylistic matchup for him to go in there and produce a level of performance that will get people excited. Unfortunately for the build-up to this fight, a lot of his greatest hits aren't allowed to be showed because they took place in the Bellator cage. But Harry, we're talking about a guy here who landed a knee on Cyborg Santos and absolutely crushed his skull open. We're talking about a guy here who, in his last fight, kicked Yamagachi's kneecap and exploded it into smithereens. When this guy throws at 100%, he does some serious damage. And if he can go out there and put on a similar performance that we've seen against Yamaguchi or against Cyborg as well, and throw some flashy strikes and get a knockout, I mean, we're off to the races here with MVP. I know everyone is going to jump on the bandwagon. Everyone is going to be excited. And, I don't even want to get to, and if you do, it's within your right, but I don't even want to get down the road that I wish it happened 5 years ago. I wish it happened 10 years ago. It's fucking happening now. It's a good fight. And we should be buzzed about it, like Shawnee said.
I think as long as you frame it in the right context, I agree with both of you. Right? Like, is the statement we should have seen him 5 years ago correct? Yeah, well, of course it is, right? Of course it is. Should we have seen him in fights where he would have been very, very, very competitive? Should we have done that? Yeah, we should. Yeah, okay, we should. Yes, fine. And then what? Right? Like, is my excitement for MVP high because I think he's going to come into the UFC and win a title and do whatever? No, he's 36 years of age. He'll be 37 very, very, very soon. That's not what he's here for either. I think the billing against Kevin Holland tells you that the UFC and MVP know exactly what this is. This is a 4 or 5 fight deal where he goes in, he fights the Kevin Hollands. If he wins and wins well, they're going to do UFC London, co-main event, MVP versus Wonderboy or something similar, right? And they're going to roll out the red carpet of fun and entertainment for MVP. Now, do I think that he beats Kevin Holland? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I think he is elusive enough. I think Kevin Holland can be drawn into the MVP style. And I can see a very, very, very destructive knockout if MVP wants it, right? I can also see that Kevin Holland tries to play spoiler and tries to do a bit of grappling, do a bit of wrestling, whatever. And that has been MVP's Achilles heel for his career. But I just don't
I think that, just sorry to interrupt, but I think with Kevin Holland, right, is that if he didn't do that against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's unlikely to do it here. But maybe that the fact that he didn't do it against Wonderboy Thompson might teach him a lesson to come in and do it in here. The smart move sometimes is the best move, but I think it's a mentality battle with Kevin Holland on top of everything else. And we've talked about a lot. We've all talked about it, isn't it, Sean? More of a mentality.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. It's a weird one as well. Like the MVP being bad against wrestlers is a thing. Like the only wrestler that ever beat him is Douglas or is Logan Storley. And that was a fucking blind robbery. I don't care what anyone says. Like Lima caught him with a good punch, but like a somewhat lucky punch. Let's be honest, the way it happened. He's beaten everyone else. Like he beat Lima in the rematch as well. And like he's fought some good guys as well. He's only fought a few of them, no doubt, right? And he's lost the two of them without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, Kevin Holland, right? I'm interested to see what way he plays it, right? Because someone said it to me as well on the Q&A there, like, would MVP struggle if Kevin Holland went a bit unorthodox? And I'm like,
there's no one more unorthodox.
MVP lives in the darkness. If you want to join him there, absolutely. But like, then you fight him, if you Kevin Holland fights him straight up, MVP is just going to take him apart then as well, or else it's going to be a stair match. And if he tries to wrestle him, I don't think he's as good at wrestling as a lot of the lads that MVP has fought. So I think it's a very hard fight for him to win. Now, it could be one of those fights where it is a stair match. There's a lot of pushing against the cage. Maybe he does get one takedown, gets on top for 90 seconds, and that's the winning of the fight. I could see something like that, you know, but
yeah. I hope not. I really do. I kind of want to go with my opinion that I feel that Kevin Holland has sold his soul for entertainment purposes inside the octagon, where, you know, he probably has had the capability of winning some fights by fighting smartly, but chooses to go down the entertainment. I think Kevin Holland wants to lose more entertainingly than he wants to win boring. And I think, you know, that it's a mentality that a lot of fighters fall into. It's not the best mentality, but I think it's a mentality that will suit MVP in this fight. And Jesus, I just can't wait to see it, to be honest. It's brilliant to see MVP in this setting. I think a fighter that has such a cult following, I think MVP is a cult following. He's like, you know, it's the same way as Nick Diaz is a cult following. He deserves to be on this stage. And, you know, we'll come on and we'll champion PFL and we'll champion Bellator. But, you know, we've seen what he is what now, 21-2, 23 fights so far in his mixed martial arts career. This is his first fight in the octagon, and it's highly anticipated. And it's, you know, it's moments and kind of fights like this that you do realize that even though the UFC isn't maybe once what it was, it's still the bee's knees. It's still where a lot of fighters want to be. And I think a win here against a guy like Kevin Holland is going to stack up there with one of the biggest moments of his career so far. Obviously, that can lead to other ways. Another quick thing I want to bring up: you said he might not have a chance at winning the title. In recent history, you know, what happens if he's given the old Alex Pereira treatment here? You know, a win against Kevin Holland, you throw him in there next against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. If he gets a win against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, there ain't nothing saying that they're going to not throw him in a title fight against Leon Edwards, an all UK affair. Now, I don't think it happens, to be honest. I think it's more so of fun fights more so than a championship run. I agree with Harry, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility, I don't think, with MVP in the UFC, because UFC are banking on stars right now. And if he goes out there, pulls off, if he goes, don't be doing that, for fuck's sake. If he goes out there and pulls off an impressive win, you never know what will happen inside the octagon. But that's
I agree. MVP champion 2025. Let's make it happen. Is
that one of your bold predictions for the end of this year?
It might be. If he wins a couple of fights, it might be too bold.
Oh, too right. What is bold is the next fight, and that's Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena. And look at, maybe I could simplify this a little bit, Harry. See our preview of Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis in some ways, and enter it into the analysis of this fight. Does Gilbert Burns still have it? Is Jack Della Maddalena good enough? We're going to fucking find out on Saturday night. I can't wait to see. But what's your opinion on this fight?
Yeah, I think this to me is the big test for Della Maddalena. I think the UFC is saying, okay, we know that you can do the striking thing, and we know that you almost got subbed in a very silly way in maybe your second performance, first performance, second performance. I can't remember exactly which one it was. Now, where are we? Do we have the ability to stop Gilbert Burns pushing us against the fence, taking us down and ragdolling us on the floor? Do we have the ability to keep Gilbert Burns at range? Do we have the ability to land those beautiful, crisp combinations on Gilbert Burns? Do we have an ability to be able to find Gilbert Burns in and around the madness that Gilbert Burns throws with his athleticism? If the answer is yes, this will be Della Maddalena off to the races. If the answer is no, then Della Maddalena will have to rebuild and find his way back up. But this is, to me, I think, genuinely the most intriguing fight on the whole card. I just think it's so good, potentially.
Indeed, yeah. I'm really looking forward to this as well. Look at the last time we saw Gilbert Burns in there, Shawnee, it was that disappointing unanimous decision loss to Bilal Muhammad. Came out, was very vocal about that, saying he was hurt, saying he wasn't himself, took that fight at short notice, of course. I mean, like you said, we can be quick to rule out guys once they start picking up losses, but I think Gilbert Burns does have a little bit in him. We spoke of Kevin Holland the last time out, and it was Jack Della Maddalena that went in there and took home a split decision over Kevin Holland in his last fight. I've totally forgotten about that fight. I even had to check and see if it was Jack Della Maddalena. I can't really remember too much of that fight, but look, it's a big ask for Jack Della Maddalena here. Very, very high on him. I would have liked to seen him fight maybe somewhere in between 5 and 10 before this fight, to be honest. And it makes me doubt his chances going in against a guy like Gilbert Burns, who has, maybe not the best striking of the two, but definitely has some big power, definitely has the ability to close the distance and take the fight down. I'm very interested to see how Jack Della Maddalena deals with that type of pressure.
Yeah, I'm really not sure again. Like I believe in both of their skill sets, to be honest, and that's a hard pick. Like Della Maddalena is the coming guy. Burns, like, if you look at Burns, 2023, he had 3 fights, which is a lot for a guy at the stage of his career. Like Bilal, kind of, the way Bilal fights, and, he beat Masvidal and beat Magny before that. 2 good wins after the smashing Chimaev fight a year earlier. I don't know. I was asked for my pick earlier on, and I gave Gilbert Burns via submission because I just think the fight might hit the ground at some stage. And I think if anyone has a big advantage anywhere, it's probably Gilbert Burns on the ground. Now, it's not like Gilbert's gone out submitting people all the time. He submitted Neil Magny last year, but his last submission before that was back in 2019 against a guy called Mike Davis, who I know none of us have ever heard of. And
legend.
It's 2016 before that. So it's not, it's not like he's submitting people all the time, but it's the only thing that I could clear in my head. I think this is going to be close. It could very well be a decision. It could very well be a split decision. It could very well be a fucking draw or something like that. I'm looking forward to it. The one drawback I would have in Gilbert Burns, right, and when we talk about lads getting older and all that, I feel like I saw Gilbert Burns at every UFC event in the front row for the last year. Like, whether it's Australia or fucking Texas or Florida or Vegas, it feels like he's just at every single one of them. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing for a 37-year-old taking a fight against the guy who is 27 years old and probably non-stop in the gym. Now, maybe it is. After 3 fights last year, he needed a bit of a rest, bit of relaxation. Maybe it's the thing he needed, but yeah, I'm not a little bit sure. It makes me kind of draw back my pick a little bit, but no, I'm going for Gilbert Burns. I think his striking is good as well. I don't foresee Della Maddalena eating him up in the striking, and that's kind of why I think maybe Burns is the pick if he can grapple a bit. But if I see the result of this on Sunday morning, if I fall asleep and it's Della Maddalena who won, I will not be at all shocked.
No, nor would I. The opening fight of the main card, lads, Peter Yan versus Song Yadong. And look at it, it's like there's a trend forming in this kind of card as we're going down along it. It's the former champion, the older of the two of fighters here, and Peter Yan coming in against the young hungry lion and Song Yadong. And yeah, again, Harry, we're asking ourselves our question in this fight is can Peter Yan get back to the level that he was at? Coming in to this fight on a horrible run, lots of doubt, 3 losses in a row, but 3 very, very, very good fighters that he has lost against in Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, and of course Merab Dashvili last time out. He comes in against Song Yadong, a guy that, fancies himself as a striker, has some big power. But if we see flashes of Peter Yan and his striking ability in this fight, he does have enough to kind of get the job done here. But it's all about what Song Yadong brings to the table for me, and is he up for this challenge against Peter Yan? But it's a really fascinating fight in the bantamweight division.
Agreed. And this is kind of a nice matchup for both of them, right? Where Song Yadong would prefer to stand and bang. And I think Piotr Yan's style, at least 2 or 3 years ago, was made for that type of fight. He can happily drag you into wrestling exchanges. He can happily drag you into stand and bang. He can happily mix things up really, really nicely. Piotr Yan also notoriously is good against like just big hitters. But then we have seen him fall off in terms of those 3 fights. The level of elite skill that he was reaching previously, I'm not seeing, and we're not seeing the same level in his most recent performances. And so this is also sort of a good time for Song Yadong to catch him, because if Song Yadong goes out and can land big shots and hurt Piotr Yan and, you know, force him to maybe become a little bit more timid, a little bit more in and of himself, then Song Yadong can just start working his own game plan and start being Song Yadong and pushing the pace and forcing Piotr Yan back. And so, you know, this is it's a tailor-made fight for both of them. And I am very, very intrigued. I would, more often than not, I would have gone Piotr Yan. And I think I've gone Piotr Yan this time too. I just think in the same way with Benoit Saint-Denis and Dustin Poirier, Piotr Yan is a far, far, far superior fighter to Song Yadong. It's just whether he has enough left in the tank. And we're going to find out.
Yeah, indeed. I actually went for Song Yadong to win a decision in this fight. And the reason behind it, you know, might make Johnny very happy in his seat there now, is I think that Song Yadong will fight to the judges and has a style that suits the judges here, in that when he does land, the impact of his strikes, I do feel, will be more impactful than what Peter Yan is able to land. So if we do get into striking exchanges, I think we could see a very, very close fight, a fight that, you know, could go either way, but a fight that, you know, which we're seeing a lot more lately, where we see one person land cumulative damage and one person land more immediately impactful damage. And I think the person who has the more immediately impactful damage here is Song Yadong. Shawnee, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that absolutely could be the case, especially, you know, we've seen Yan go to decision now 3 times in a row and lose all of them, two of them a split decision. So that absolutely makes sense. I was looking at Yan's record, and I think what's very interesting, right, is even through his championship reign now, how many rounds he's fought, right? So I'll go through his last few fights: 5 rounds, 3 rounds, 5 rounds, 5 rounds, 4 rounds, 5 rounds, 3 rounds, 3 rounds, 3 rounds, into the second round, the third round, and in his first UFC fight, he finished in the first round. That's a lot of rounds, a lot of wear and tear. And, you know, Graham mentioned about Makayev the other day to look up what age he is, because sometimes lads get old in front of us. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily happened with Yan. You know, he's only 31 years of age, but he's given and taken an awful lot in there. Look, this is one of these fights, and it's not against Song Yadong, and it's not Song Yadong. I kind of just hope Pereira Yan wins, because like I feel like the UFC needs him, like the top of that division needs him. If he could get back to his best, that would be so great. And I like someone just said it in the Q&A, is this about him just kind of throwing his hands a little bit more? And I think it is. Yan needs to find that savage he used to be again. Come out and let it fucking go. Like Song, I know, you know, I think you made a good point that he might hit harder than him. You can't let that, you don't let it happen. You hit harder than him. Be that guy. Fucking devastate him. Do what you did to Aldo. Take him apart. It's 3 rounds as well. It's not your usual 5. So you don't have to worry about cardio or anything. I think that's what he needs to do. I think we need to see a confident, winning, destructive display from Pereira Yan here.
And confidence is the key word there, Shawnee, because I don't know whether you lads agree. It seems to be more like a mental battle, more so than falling off of a cliff skill-wise for Peter Yan at this stage of his career. But like I said, like I think, you know, I'm really leaning on, you know, sometimes how you can't always lean on it this way about how fighters start fight and how well that you start a fight. But when you're a guy like Peter Yan who has lost 3, looking similar enough to, like I said in the main event, at the start of that fight is going to be so important, and kind of setting the trend of what's going to happen throughout 3 rounds, and I'm so excited. That's a banging fight to open up the main card, and I always had a soft spot for Peter Yan as well. I like Song Yadong as well. I like his style, but I think I agree with Sean. Even though I've picked against him, I would like Peter Yan to kind of get the win and remain prominent at the top of the bantamweight division, but that'll be seen in the opening fight on the main card on Saturday night. Our prelims headliner is a spicy one too, lads. The big boys are going at it. No speculation going in here. I have to say, I forgot to say it too, Johnny. You mentioned about Muhammad Mukhayev's age. There's a lot of speculation about his age there over recent months as well. Lads coming out and accusing him of being older than what he is and everything like that. But
if he does win it, let's say he gets the title shot at 301, he wins it. He's not going to be the younger champion, is he? Is that correct?
No, he needed to do it. He needed to do it this month, I believe. So yeah, I made that error. I actually tweeted in the Twitter group that he still was capable of, but then I replied to that and said I was actually wrong. When I looked into it, I'd seen something that he was, but then I also saw the fact, and the fact is that I think he's going to be a couple of months short of that. So that's gone out the window anyway. But what's not gone out the window is the heavyweight title fight that we do have in the prelims headliner. And it's a belter, Shawnee. Curtis Blaydes, Jailton Almeida. And it's another fight as well that we're going to find out. We're going to find out what level Jailton Almeida is at. Did not impress me in the last fight, even though he got the win. But it's an interesting one nonetheless.
Yeah, we're going to learn an awful lot in this. We're going to learn in this fight, but in this card, there's so much to learn. This one is very interesting, right? Because, so what has Jailton Almeida been doing in heavyweight? He's been taking everyone down, the Brazilian Habib, they were calling him and all, right? So the question then is, can he keep doing that the higher he gets up the ranks? The question is, can he do that against the big boys? He's a high-ranked big boy here. So let's see. There'll be a few questions answered in this one. I believe he's good enough to get to right to the top of the division. I believe we did a contender on him as well. And like the thing about this is this could just push him to light heavyweight, maybe. So
that's what I'd be thinking too.
But I don't know. It's interesting because like it's funny things, the way things happen. Aspinall was given the same opportunity against Curtis Blaydes, step up, big wrestler. His body fell apart in that one as well. Yet he's the interim champion now. So it's weird the way things happen. So, but at the same time, that's a mad one. I think I don't know what to think. I don't know who's going to win the wrestling battle. Don't know. I think both of them are okay strikers, good strikers for the heavyweight division, but not great strikers. Like Jailton showed better striking early, like a good while back, but then when I've seen him recently, it hasn't looked amazing. Blaydes is what he is. He throws a bit of an overhand, and he sometimes he comes out and he likes to think he's fucking Alistair Overeem. Did he do that actually against Alistair Overeem once? Maybe he
could have.
I don't know. I've no idea who's going to win this fight. None. What? So, I've no analysis, lads. Someone's going to
win. Harry, maybe we'll bring you in for a little bit of analysis and see. Like I'm leaning on Curtis Blaydes here because I think it's a fight that Jailton Almeida will need to kind of better himself in his career, where, he cannot dictate where the fight goes. And a big kind of thing that Jailton Almeida has been able to do, and especially so far in his UFC career, is dictate where the fight goes. And he's not being faced the moment inside the octagon yet. All right, a couple of sticky moments maybe against Lewis, but always remained on top, always remained somewhat in control. I think he's going to be faced with moments here in this fight where, he's not going to have top priority on where this fight goes, because I think Curtis Blaydes is, has the capabilities of keeping this fight on the feet. And I think that's where we're going to see the true Jailton Almeida. How do you feel about that assessment?
I completely agree. I think this is a tough fight for Jailton Almeida, to be honest. I think that he is used to taking people down with jiu-jitsu, right? His primary thing is jiu-jitsu rather than a grappler necessarily. And I think the difficulty will come in that Curtis Blaydes' game is to not allow jiu-jitsu to happen, right? It's to not allow grappling to happen. I do think Curtis Blaydes is a more seasoned striker than Jailton Almeida is. Jailton Almeida has big power. Don't make any mistake, and Curtis Blaydes can certainly be finished. But I think this is a very intelligent matchmaking from the UFC, because if Curtis Blaydes goes out and wins, then Gelton can say, oh, well, fuck it. The big guys were too big and I'm going to go to light heavyweight and I'll win a title there. If he does beat Curtis Blaydes, well, then you're going to see Gelton Almeida versus Tom Aspinall at some point very, very soon, I'd say.
It's kind of like, talking about the landscape and the heavyweight division now. And this is going to sound strange to say, but might be to his detriment if Gelton Almeida goes out and wins this, because what's next for him after that? We're waiting on John Jones and Stipe Miocic. Tom Aspinall is not willing to fight. It's likely if he does fight, it'll be Cyril Gane next for him.
Strip him.
Yes, I shouldn't have mentioned that man's name when Shawnee is here, but I'm like, look, obviously he's not going to be thinking about that. He's going to be wanting to go out and win, but I don't know, man. The heavyweight division is at somewhat.
I agree with Shawnee, by the way. I definitely agree with Shawnee. Strip him.
Yeah.
Strip him.
Yeah. If he's not willing to fight, I think that Tom Aspinall and Cyril Gane fight should have been announced already for the interim title, to be honest. That's the fight to make in that division right now. And you're still going to get your... Huh?
Not even for the interim. Just strip him.
Just strip him altogether.
Yeah. Like, you can say to John Jones, you will get the title shot as soon as you come back, if you come back. But why?
Yeah, but there's the difference between, you're saying to strip John Jones here, or strip Tom Aspinall?
Yeah, John Jones.
No, because you're not going to do that, Harry, because you strip a guy because he got injured, and then he comes back as a non-champion, and he's not going to make pay-per-view points. It's just...
They made the interim title so they wouldn't strip John Jones and they could carry on the division. That's not been done. So strip Tom Aspinall.
I thought you were talking about stripping Tom Aspinall. I was. No, I thought Harry was. as well. But so we're coming out with this conversation and we have no heavyweight champion.
Strip them both. Strip them all. Make Lewis versus Almeida for the title.
What's your analysis of Curtis Blaydes versus Almeida? Strip both the champions. Let's do it. That's it. You only hear it on the Severe Setup. Look, let's move on to the prelim section, and let me pick and choose, if you please, on the prelims card. We're not going to go in chronological order here. I'm going to stop at Mateus Gamrot versus Rafael dos Anjos. And Sean, this is another interesting one again, because we're dealing with a Mateus Gamrot who's looking to rise up the rankings, Rafael dos Anjos who's flirting with the welterweight division, flirting with the lightweight division, but he himself, coming off of a loss of Vicente Luque, has a tall order here against Mateus Gamrot. And, while we did kind of have that level of wonder, and while that wonder still exists, whether Gamrot is good enough, whether the Anjos has fallen off enough, I think out of all of these type of fights that we have on this card, I think I'd be most confident in Gamrot getting the win, but you can never count out the Rafael dos Anjos at the end of the day.
It's an interesting one, right? Because... apart from the end of the Fizia fight, Gamrot has kind of fallen over the line a little bit. Like the problem with Gamrot here, right, is, and people, this is going to happen to Paddy Pimblett in a few years as well. People think, he's this young up and coming fighter when he came, but he's not. Like this guy fought Norman Park in the Coliseum 7 years ago. 7 years ago, like that. That is a long time ago. This guy made his debut in 2012. Like he's been around a very, very, very long time now. The difference, I think, between we've had a lot of similar fights. The Saint-Denis Poirier fight. RDA is a few fights on for most of them lads. Burns probably maybe on the way there. Poirier may be on the way there, and a few more. He's there. Like our RDA is there, but still he's a good fighter. Gamrot isn't as in his prime maybe as the other lads are. He isn't as young and vibrant and destructive as the other lads are. So it's a bit of a different dynamic in this one. Although I do agree with the initial point. I do like Gamrot to win it. How does he win it though? Like I think the difference between dos Anjos now and dos Anjos back in the day is I don't think he has it in him anymore to do what he did to Pettis. And that's when dos Anjos was great. He threw that big left hand. He hurt him with it. He pushed him against the cage. He had cardio for days, and non-stop, unnatural. Some might say. He just doesn't have that anymore. So it's going to be. He has to fight a more even fight. He has to fight a more.
Also don't have your USADA in this fight either.
Fuck! Dos Anjos to win.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts, Harry?
I just think Gamrot probably runs through him. Like I think the unorthodox grappling style of Gamrot is very, very difficult to deal with. I think Gamrot has a more proven gas tank, should we say? And I just think that Gamrot can fight at a higher clip, and at this point in RDA's career, that's going to be difficult to keep up with. Gamrot could take a shot, and he's going to need to. I think RDA is going to try and make it as dirty as possible, and it's going to be Gamrot's job to sort of start to strip away the dirt and clean his way through into takedowns and wrestling exchanges. But the other side of this, I will just mention, just because we should, from a purely judging perspective, I think it will be important for Gamrot to prioritize damage as well. And sometimes when the wrestling exchanges become more scrambly, Gamrot does a poor job of then prioritizing damage. And when they're on the feet, I think he's going to need to really push a pace. But I suspect Gamrot wins this relatively handy.
Will the two of you ever shut up about this judge and stuff? It's so boring, man. We're always talking about this fucking judging. Go on.
Well, I'm finding a lot of a trend now, and it's down to you. It's your fault, Shawnee, that everyone is kind of leaning into. I'm hearing a lot more fighters than I've ever heard before in preparations, talking about how fights are scored, and a lot of people are basing their style on it. And that's exactly what you should be doing here. I think if you're a smaller striker, you need to be fighting and kind of working your game plan into landing those big shots, and that's what's going to win you rounds. But I feel that it's going to be more prominent, and we're going to be talking about it a lot more. But Harry, I want to go to you about our next fight, and that is Caitlin Cermiara, formerly Chukagan, doesn't like to pick an easy last name. Fair play, Caitlin. Against Macy Barber in the women's 125-pound division. Another, promising up-and-comer Macy Barber. She's flirted with the idea of breaking into the top 5 a couple of times in her career. She's not quite got there yet. She has another chance here against Chukagan or Cermiara, I should say, excuse me, in this one. What are your thoughts?
This is the Max Holloway test, right? This is the Max Holloway test. If Macy Barber can go out and do Macy Barber things, if she can stick her forehead in Cerminara's chest and take her down and make it dirty and make it ugly and just do what Macy Barber does really, really well, then she'll win, and there will be either a title shot or a very, very, very big fight coming next for her. However, if Caitlin gets her way, then she'll stick on the outside and there'll be some kickboxing exchanges, and she'll stay long, and she'll use the jab, and she'll use that roundhouse kick, and she's going to keep her away, and maybe we'll see some takedowns from Caitlin. But more, I think we're moving in this division towards the same thing that we're seeing with the 145-pound division, where sort of that Max Holloway test is dying a little bit. And I think this is a good time if you're Macy Barber to be fighting Caitlin Cerminara. It's a good time, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Interested to see that one, see if Macy can get over the line. Shawnee, I'll stop with you. Michel Pereira versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. Look, you said that Michel Pereira basically got his balls cut off earlier on. Please explain.
Well, they came into the UFC as, the guy who was flipping and going all over the place and suplexing lads and all, and now he's not that anymore. Now, is he a better fighter? Absolutely, but he's also a fighter that's going to a split decision with Santiago Ponzinibbio, and very good fighter. I'm a bit perplexed by this matchmaking. Oleksiejczuk beat Chito and Jacoani in his last fight, lost to Caballero before that. He's lost to Dustin Jacob. Why are Michel Pereira? Okay, he's had weight issues and things like that, but I don't know. I find this one a bit odd. Are they putting him in there with a guy who they think, you look at his record, and sometimes this is why Sherdog is better than Tapology, because the first thing that comes up is how they've won their fights. 19 wins, 14 knockouts, 1 submission, right? So that's the type of fighter, if you're to look at a record, that you want to put in there against Michel Pereira, because he's probably going to stand and bang on him, So maybe they're just trying to put a fun fight here. Maybe look at Pereira as a guy who's just a fun fighter, and they want to make more fun fights for him. And that's grand, but also that's a change in tact. Like before, they're like, you can't be fun. You know, you need to be a good fighter now, type of thing. So I don't know. Hopefully this is him coming back. But at the same time, I watched a bit of Oleksiejczuk, and look, he has power, you know, legendary Polish power. He can catch Pereira. If he does, it could be a big issue. But you know, I don't know if you agree. I have a bit of a soft spot, obviously, as everyone knows, for Pereira, but like, it feels like he's just stuck in a weird position in his career at the moment, where like a lot of like every promotion in the world, including the UFC, probably 5 years ago and beyond, would love to have a fighter like him. He's 30 years of age, experienced, out of Brazil, exciting. This is a guy who can headline cards and be a star for you, and he's on a 5-6 fight win streak. And he's just buried. Look, it's a good card.
I would put it down to the weight misses, Shawnee. You know,
yeah,
and you know, I think that has kind of halted him. Look at his last fight up there against Petrosky. He was at middleweight. This fight is at middleweight here, so it's more so. I would look at this fight as more so an introduction into the middleweight division. You go out there, you chuck Petrosky in the last fight. You go out there, you absolutely destroy Oleksiejczuk in this fight. You create a little bit of hype. We probably give him a little bit more of a well-known name the next time out. So that's why I would feel that's where he's at with his career right now. In terms of his style, I'm 100% with you. It's like why we were so engrossed by him, why we loved him so much was that little level of madness that he had in there, right? And, you know, that's why anybody wants to tune in. We go in there, we see technical battles, we see wars, but it's very rare you go in there and you see lads doing fucking somersaults and flips and all of this mad stuff inside of there. But that came at a cost to his cardio. And I think that maybe that, I think he had to rein it back because of the cardio issues, but that was also a testament of him fighting down at welterweight. But at the same time, he's reined it back a little bit too much. Look at Johnny Walker in the 205-pound division. He needed to rein back a little bit, but he's reined it back a little bit too much because all of that mad stuff, Harry, all of those big, wild kind of shots that he does like to throw, it is good for us to look at, but it also confuses your opponent and adds an extra little implement into your game as well when you're going out there and doing that, when you have that level of unpredictability. And I guess the question to you is that, you know, should we see him introduce something like that back into his game a little bit, within reason, of course?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I'm coaching the classes that I coach, right, we have a specific crop of students that I'm coaching at the moment, and there's a couple of people in there who are natural athletes, right, and they try to just do athletic things all of the time, and what we find is that stops. Right? That stops their progress in a lot of ways. Whereas when they're able to take some of that athleticism off, they take some of the edge off of that athleticism and they delve more into sort of technical progression and skill progression and this sort of stuff. When you then add it back in, their game multiplies, right? And they start to really, really, really find bigger and bigger leaps in their progression. And I feel the same with Michel Pereira, that, okay, he's done a fantastic job at rounding out some of his skills. He's done a fantastic job at becoming more of a solid fundamental fighter. But now let's sprinkle in a little bit of the madness. Just season with the madness, you know, just a wee bit of seasoning.
Aaron Pico's a bit like that as well. Less madness, but more maybe the athleticism side of it.
For sure. Yeah. For sure. And Johnny Walker the same. Like, Johnny Walker's a freak athlete. Johnny Walker's got freak madness. He just needs to just season it rather than, you know. And that's fine. That's a very, very, very hard balance to find. A very hard balance to find. But, you know, Michel Pereira is obviously no spring chicken. He's in his 30s, and so if he's going to find it, he needs to find it soon. But it should be a fun fight regardless. Like, it feels like Oleksiejczuk is a fighter that will stand and bang, and Michel Pereira will like that, and, you know, it should be an easy enough win for him.
Indeed, Johnny, I thought you were coming in there, but you know, we were talking about freak athletes. We're talking about freaks of nature, but we got to stop on Robelis Despaigne, the Cuban heavyweight, coming in at 4-0 against Josh Parisian in the heavyweight division. And my goodness, if you're listening to this and you do not know this guy, go back and watch a couple of his previous fights. This lad is...
It'll only take you 19 seconds.
Have been watched. That's it.
Yeah. Like, this guy is a freak of nature. First fight was his longest fight, to be fair to him. 4 minutes and 54 seconds. The right uppercut gets the job done. Goes in there 12 seconds. Goes in there 3 seconds. Goes in there 4 seconds. I'm wondering, will this one here be 5 seconds? This guy is a freak of nature. And look, he might not be the best fighter in the world. He might not go on to win a world title. But this guy is, I put him on rug levels. This guy is must-see television from what I've seen so far. He's either going to go in there and knock heads clean off shoulders or go out there and gas very hard once he gets past 5 minutes. And I'm very excited to see what happens. Heavyweight version of Yoel Romero, if you ask me. A freak of nature. Robilis Despaigne. What are your thoughts, guys? I'm sure you've looked a little bit and seen all the tweets and all the knockouts happening this week. And, am I getting too excited about here? Am I getting too excited about this one, Shawnee?
What could go wrong with a 4-0 heavyweight? Nothing could possibly go wrong. He comes fast and he comes hard. And pause. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it. Poor old Josh Parisian, but he's...
Yeah, I feel so. I hate to laugh at the situation, but I feel so bad for him. Do you know the little sheep, and do you know the Jurassic Park #1, and they're in the park, right? And they're bringing in the little sheep, and everybody is watching all around, and they bring in the little sheep, and he's there, and it's lightning and it's raining, and then T-Rex comes in. Well, Despaigne is T-Rex, and Parisian is the sheep. And he's going to get eaten, I think, on Saturday night. And that's well worth tuning in for in the prelim section. That would be, I don't know if it's an early prelim or if it's not an early prelim, but who cares when it's on? Definitely check that fight out. Prelims overview. Let me get shit together. Pedro Munoz versus Kyler Phillips in the 135-pound division. We got Felipe Lins versus Ayan Kutalaba at 205 pounds. We got CJ Vergara versus Astu Alamibev in the 125-pound division, and Joanne Wood versus Marina Moroz in the 125 women's division. That opens up the card.
It's our last one. It's our last one. She put it on Instagram.
Who's that? Joanne Wood?
Yep.
I'm already looking forward to her next. I was thinking fair play to her. She's still there doing the damn thing. Like, yeah, things were not looking good for Joanne Wood. Maybe the name change gave her a couple of extra fights or something.
How'd she beat Ariana Lipsky, lads? How the fuck did that happen?
I don't know, but that cost us big that time. But out of the 4 fights that I did mention, Harry, anyone standing out to you at all? They're not really. I mean, I want to call them the best of the rest, or maybe the worst of the best. Maybe, I don't know, that off this card, but a couple of interesting ones nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chuck Joanne Wood's name in there just because it's a retirement fight, right? I think it's a big card to go out on if it is her last fight, as Shawnee and you say ad nauseum. But yeah, I mean, it'll be a fun fight. Marina Moroz, she's going to try and do some takedown things and some jabbing and some things. And if Joanne Wood decides to turn up and it is her last one and she throws hell for leather, we know that she can be entertaining. We know that she can be fun, and so I hope that if it is her last one, she can go out in a way that she's proud of.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that's what we'll wait to see on Saturday night. That's the opening fight of the night. Main event, Sean O'Malley, Chito Vera, Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'll leave it with this, lads. A lot of chit-chat on the table last week about renaming UFC events, renaming UFC pay-per-views. Harry, if you were to rename this, if you were to give it, back in the day, we had Revenge, we had Best of Enemies, all that kind of shit. If you were to name this card, what would you name it on Saturday night?
Old Dogs, New Tricks.
Not bad. I like that, Shawnee.
I know. I was trying to go, like, there's a lot going to be learned here. So I was like, UFC 299, take them to
education.
Take them to school. Education.
Education. I like that. Yeah, education.
Or maybe we could call it UFC 299, School of Hard Knocks.
School's out.
That's it. And that's the severe setup out for this week. At BJJ Harry Powell, at Sean Sheehan, at I O'Neill. We'll talk to you the next time we're breaking down this next week. Let's go, fam.